and all this material is available in my GitHub repo, which let me put the link right now. So, and I haven't refreshed it, but do not download it right now from the GitHub, but I will refresh the repo today, and later on you can get the latest files from there. So I'm just going to put this in the chat, because if we cannot get through everything, don't feel like you missed on anything. You can later on download. It also has my contact, so you can get in touch with me if you have question, comments. Please, as we go, put your questions in the chat. Do not wait for the last minute. I do not mind stopping and answering your question, because the whole goal of this talk is for you to get some value out of it, not for me to just go through my materials, right? Because I have gone through this before. So put any questions, any comments. If you didn't understand anything, if you want me to repeat, or if you have a follow-up question, please put it in the chat. I'll be happy to stop and then answer your question. So I'm not going to read the bio. I'm sure you read, it's in there. So why would you listen to this talk, right? Like, this is a Saturday, evening or night for some of you. Why would you spend 1 hour to listening to me? So to answer that, I want to make it upfront to, you know, for you to appreciate that what this talk can help you with, right? After you listen to this talk. If you have bunch of SQL servers, say like hundreds or thousands of SQL Server, if you have SQL Server in Azure VM, or if you have SQL Server in managed instance, which is a service provided by Microsoft in Azure cloud, then this talk is for you. Why? You can, with few lines of code, run against hundreds and thousands of your server or VM or managed instance, and can check if your databases and your servers are complying with the best practices that are recommended by Microsoft, right? There are default rules. You can evaluate your server and database against those rules. And when I say rules, these are best practice suggestions by Microsoft engineers who created this product, right? If the default rule does not fit your environment, you can customize those default rules. You can create your own rules. You can also bring the rules from third party, but be careful, right? Because you want to read the code first and understand. Do not just go and run it against your non-production. There can be code embedded inside it, doing something funky, who knows, right? And you can also disable certain rules. If you think that I know what I'm doing, I do not need to evaluate my environment against this rule every time, you can disable it. What environments are getting supported? I listed this here just so, and I'm not going to read all this. So if you ask me the question like, can I do it in this environment, that environment, this will be my answer. And at the end of this, I'll make sure, even if I skip some stuff and talk about the last one that you see here. If someone says, I do not know PowerShell, I do not want to code anything, there is a UI that you can use to do the same. But with the UI, you can only do one server at a time. But if you write few lines of code, which I'll give you a sample, you can do thousands of database with few lines of code or servers. There's one warning. The tools that I'm going to show you today, this is really not deep into security. And Microsoft recommend you use SQL vulnerability assessment for security reason, not use the SQL assessment. SQL assessment is for other best practices, like we'll see some of the examples. These are the demos that I'm going to show you depending on the time. There are some references if you want to read more. And the most important part is my contact. So you can always reach out to me if you have question, comments. So take a note. And this is also in the slide that I put the GitHub link, but as I said, do not download it right now. I'm going to refresh all these scripts after this and then do it maybe tomorrow sometime. So good enough. If you have any question, let me know. I'm going to move to the demo. That's all. I do not have any other slide or any material to talk about, right? So first, let's talk about some default rules, right? What are these rules, right? What am I talking about at all? Like, just to get some sense. So what I did, Microsoft published these rules in JSON format or in a CSV. And being a SQL Server person, I thought, why not just load it into a SQL Server table, right? And then I know what I'm talking about, what I'm looking at. So I load it into a local instance in my machine running in this laptop that I'm using, and in a table. And I'm going to, this is 2019 with CU16, I believe, and just a table called, database schema and table, simple, right? So let's do a count. There's 244 rules, and let's look at some samples, right? So each rule has an ID. Is it enabled, disabled? It also has a level. So is it high, low, medium, severe, and that kind of. It has a display name, a message, this tags, and we'll talk about tags a lot. You can take advantage of tags. There's a description. It also gives you a link, actually. This link will take you to a Microsoft documentation and give you more details about this rule. What's the target type? Because the rules can be targeted against a database or a server, and it tells you whether this rule is good for both Windows and Linux, or is just for Windows or just for Linux. So that's what it talks about. And then what kind of engine, right? Is it on premises, cloud, both, or just this? What's the minimum version of SQL Server, major version? So it talks about that. So that's give us some idea. And so what are those target types, right? So we have database and server, and there are some nulls, right? Sorry, I should have talked about. So null means unknown. It's really not unknown. What in this case, what happened is there is a rule say came out for SQL Server 2012, and then in subsequent releases, the recommendation changed, right, for the higher version. So they kept the base rule and they added a new rule, or a modification of that rule for the newer version. So those are, I think, tagged as null. And as you can see, there are high, info, low, medium, warning, and these are the count. And there's a bunch of these are just for Windows. Some will work in both Windows and Linux. Yeah, and I'm going to skip those. So these are some of my favorites, and your favorite doesn't have to match with me. You can find your own favorite, like I like you. I can check if I have the latest CU. So if I have hundreds and thousands of database, I can check this with one line of code. If my all temp DB files are same size, which is strongly recommended. If I have duplicate index, weak password. How about login with the same password, right? You see ransomware messages and attacks on databases every day pretty much now. It became a like a daily news that people stop even paying attention, which is risky. So there are a bunch of things that I like, and some of these I use. So any questions so far? Okay, if not, I'm going to move ahead. So before I dive deep, I'm just going to show you um, a brief how to use this, right? So with some of my favorites. So this use a PowerShell module that's maintained by Microsoft called SQL Server module. This SQL Server module actually replaced the old SQL PS module. So I'm going to import that, and then I'm just declaring some variable. I'll take a pause here. Actually, I should probably talked about this before at the beginning. The tool that I'm using here, you see, this is called Azure Data Studio. This is a multi-platform tool. It's extension based. It's released by Microsoft. It's free to download. You can run many different languages, but the other thing is, as John was showing you, notebooks, right? Jupyter notebooks. You can actually come here. They have all these kernels: Python, Spark, Spark Scala, PySpark, Log Analytics, Custo SQL. You can run all these notebooks. So I'm using a PowerShell notebook. The previous one was a SQL notebook, and a notebook literally give you a capability of having your comments, your code, your output. You can save it and send it to someone. I'm going to leave it at that. If you want to know more about notebooks, there are bunch of resources. If you search online, many speakers wrote. There are YouTube videos. Microsoft has bunch of videos by Anna Hoffman. Look at those. Okay, so I'm going to run this variables now. I'll talk about this command in the next slide a little bit more and give you some links to read more. I'm saying invoke SQL assessment against my server instance, which was declared here. And then I'm saying check if my instance has any deprecated feature, right? So maybe I did a upgrade and I want to make sure that I didn't carry over any deprecated features that I want to get rid of, right? So I can check those just by this one line code. And at the end, I'll show you how you can run this against hundreds and thousands of servers in one line. So here it says this, yes, I do have a couple of deprecated features, right? So you can read about those. And when I'm going through this exercise, I'm not going to look at the output and will tell you how to solve this because that's going to take us a whole day or probably more because there are 244 rows. My goal of this talk is not to tell you how to solve all this problem. My goal today is just how you can identify the problems, right? And because if we keep talking about solving these problems, we'll be here for the whole day. And I want to make sure that I at least finish 5 minutes before, so the next speaker has time, and you guys can get a break to get a drink. So the next one is check TMDB file not same size, right? So just for the demo purpose, what I'm going to do here, I will change one of my TMDB file from 8 meg to 10 meg, right? And I'm just doing this to show you this demo. This is the beauty of using notebooks, that I can do different things just by staying here. And now I did that. So let's run this. It's telling me that all my TMDB files are not same size. And if we go there, fully, okay, I change it back to 8 meg again. And now if I run this, means I'm clean, right? It doesn't give me any output. Um, how about I make a login with the same password, right? And I'm just doing this for a demo purpose. And now if I use this rule, login equal password, it tells me that, hey, you have a login with the same password. How nice this will be to run against 1000 servers just with 2 lines of code and find out. I'm going to create some tables and indexes just for demo purpose again, and find duplicate indexes. Okay, so Hassan has a question. Is assessment is different between Azure SQL and on-premises SQL? Yes, it will find the target. So Azure SQL database, which is a PaaS service, this product is still not good for that, right? So if you go to my list here, we can use this for SQL Server on Azure virtual machines, for managed instance, SQL running on Linux, and SQL Server 2012 and higher. It does not work against oh, okay, from Facebook page, someone asked a question. So yes, so I'll answer it. Um, Azure SQL database, which is a PaaS service, this SQL assessment is still not supported against Azure SQL database. It's only supported if SQL Server running on Azure VM and Azure SQL managed instance. When you run a rule, it automatically detects your target, and based on the target, it will decide which rules to run and which one not to run. As we saw that we have rules for Windows operating system, we have rules for both Windows and Linux. We have against database, against server, and all that. So it will automatically decide. Hopefully I answered the question. If not, put your follow-up question and I'll come back to that. So now it's saying that I have a duplicate index, right? So I can identify. How about unused index? It tells you that, hey, you have this index because I just created those, but I just want to show you this for demo. But be careful when you delete unused indexes, right? Doesn't matter what query you use, because maybe that index only get used once a month for a reporting purpose. So you want to take some caution. But initially you can use this to find out. I'm going to skip the max memory. How about power config, right? A lot of time when you open case with Microsoft or when you're troubleshooting, people find that, hey, the you know, oftentimes people say, um, did you check your power configuration, right? I know for global warming, you should be careful about power and all that, but I'm not going to be careful with power on my SQL Server, because if I'm spending, thousands of dollars for license cost per core, I want to make sure that my CPU is churning with the, as fast as it can. So you should always put your SQL Server power configuration to, um, I'll show you this, to high performance. So mine is not. So it's giving me, this is my list. And now if I check this, it tells me that my power plan is not correctly set up. So now I'm setting this to high performance. And if I run this now, um, sorry, if I run this, I have no warning. If I switch back my power configuration to balanced, I'll get the warning again. Okay. So these are a couple of samples that I show you. So let me go back to my demo list. I want to make sure I'm following. So I've shown you this one. I've shown you this one. I'm not going to talk about the quick start one, because everything in the quick start is actually in the in-depth notebook. So, but if some of you are busy, you do not have time to go through the in-depth notebook, for them, you can follow the quick start. So let's go to the in-depth one. And this is where we're going to spend most of our time today. Okay. And this notebook, I want to tell you upfront that I did not write this from scratch. I copied it from here and then I modified it. I even modified some stuff yesterday, but these are not still in my GitHub. I'm going to upload this. And I wrote enough notes for you. I'm not going to read this. Is there any solution for on-premises environment? This can use for on-premises environment. The demo I just showed you. So the question here is there any solution for on-premises environment? Yes. Any environment, SQL Server 2012 and up, you can run this. The demo that I was showing you and the demo that I'm going to show you now, all of this I'm running against on-premises SQL Server. I just have the environment in my laptop, a SQL Server 2019 CU16. But you can use this for any environment from SQL 2012 and up. Hopefully I answered the question. Again, I said here, I think I'm going to go back. This is for on-premises. Okay. Uh, so this needs PowerShell, and I wrote a bunch of comments. Please read those through. These are the two commands that you use for SQL assessment. One is one you saw, we can invoke the assessment, and the other one is to get SQL assessment item. And the get SQL assessment item, what it does not run the assessment, but giving it given a target, I can extract a list of the rules that will imply. So I can do that. And these are both URLs. So if you click this, it's going to take you to a website where you can read more about these rules. Again, as I said before, you need the SQL Server module. This is the minimum version you need for this to work. And the version is right now, if you download it, you are guaranteed to get a higher version. So let's run this. As you can see, I have 21.1.18245. I need 18206. And XP command shell is a setting in SQL Server. If you don't know, look it up. It is recommended to keep disabled, but some of the rules here need XP command shell. So if you turn it off, those rules will not run, they will fail. If you need to run those rules, the recommendation will be in your code. You enable it, do your assessment and disable it right away. Microsoft is well aware of it. So I reached out to the product team and they are working on it to use WMI instead of XP command shell, but that's not there yet. So I wrote a, you know, copied some of the correspond, some of the email I had back and forth with the product team. So again, we're going to now here, I'm doing a assessment against my SQL Server. So when I give the target as a server, it automatically knows which rules to test or to assess. So to answer the previous question, this is against the on-premises SQL Server. Now, I did not put any filter, right, or any predicate here. So it's going to run all the rules. And, like I said, I'm not going to read these recommendations. You can do it, because otherwise we'll be here all day. Now, I wrote this option 2 to 6, the same line of code. You can write it in different ways. So I know everybody has their own style of programming. All of these are going to do the same thing. So they'll give you the same result set. I'm doing, okay, so this is for SQL Server running on Azure VM. If you are running Azure VM and running SQL Server, you can also do this. I'm not going to run this. I'm just going to give you an example. Of course, again, this is probably not this is just for demo, probably okay, because I'm exposing the public IP address for my VM. You probably don't want to do that, right? I don't do that at my work. You probably want to use private endpoints, and you don't want to expose it like this. But there are other ways you can, you can take care of the security and run against Azure virtual machines. Now, if you see here what I did with this variable, I took all the database names and then I pass one of the database. Right now, if I want to run this just against one database, I can do that. So that's what I'm going to do here. So now this rule is running against wildward importer. So let me actually, when this is running, let me turn on my management studio so I can show you what I'm talking about. And again, you can have so these are our results. There are a bunch of warnings, foreign key with no indexes. Um, and if we see, go down a little bit further, there are deprecated, features, modules that I'm using, and all kind of things, unused indexes, because it's my demo environment, right? Index is fragmented and all that, right? So all these things you can get in with just one line of code. And again, I can run the same piece of code in 3 different ways. If I say I want to run it against all my databases in instance, right? So here, this is my local named instance. We just ran this against this. If I want to run it against all the databases, I cannot have the filter with the name, right? I can just get all the database names and pipe it to Invoke Sql Assessment. I'm not going to run this. It takes a little bit longer. Now, so far, what I've done, I haven't used any filters, right? I just came and said, run all the default rules as is given by Microsoft. But you might have a situation that you said, can I just run one rule quickly? I need to check something against all my environment or just one server database. Yes, you can do that. So, but before we go there, I want to show you, because so far I've been using Invoke SQL Assessment. I haven't used Get SQL Assessment. What Get does not run the rules. Just tells me what rules will be applicable for this target. So here we did a get against a SQL Server 2019, and it gives me all the rule names that will be applicable if I run this, run it against this target. Um, I can also say, give me all the rules that apply to applicable for just master database. I can do that. Gives me all the rules for master database. I can also say give me all the rules with minimum severity warning. We saw there are different severity type, if you remember, 4 or 5 different types. I can check those out. I can check, here is the tag I talked about, right? I can check with trace flag tag, backup tag, and whatnot. So I can get all the rules here. And I'm not running these rules at this time. I'm just getting a list of the rules. Now coming here, I just want to run one rule and I can run it by its ID. A rule has an ID, XP command shell. So before we do this, let's enable XP command shell just for demo purpose. I do not recommend you enable it. So now it gives me a warning, right? As it exposes to security risk. So, how nice it will be if you're a consultant or if you're new to a company or your company took over another company and you want to find out if I have, 1000 server who has XP command shell on, I can just go and run this and it will tell me, right? So if I turn it off right now, come here, run this again, it's running clean. I can also run with the tag, right? A rule. And this is the first time I want to show that I can get SQL assessment items and then I can pipe it and use invoke in the same piece of code. And PowerShell has a good thing called outgrid view pass through. With that, you can interactively select which rules you want to run. So what do I mean by that? I can come here and I'm just going to pick up randomly, right? Say I want to run just this rule and this rule. So just run those 2 rules. Do that. Now, so far, what I've shown you, we're 36 minutes. None of these are saving the result, right? We are running it interactively, looking at the result set in the window and moving ahead, but that's probably not the way you want to do it. At your work, you probably want to save the result, work through some of the issues, run it again, see how much progress you made. You can create some graphs, maybe some Power BI reports if some of you are into Power BI, and then maybe show it to your boss, right? Say, hey, this is what we're doing. We had this many thousands of, things were not complying, and see how much progress we did, right? So to show you this, I can do is invoke SQL assessment, and then I can write it to a table, passing it my server name, database name, schema, and table name. So now it's running. It's saving the result set into a table. It's going to give me some warning because I turned off my XP command shell and it cannot run some of those commands or cannot access. So now if I take this, open a new window, run this, you can see that it's all got saved into the result. And Azure Data Studio also has some visualization if you are into this. And I'm not going to spend time right now because we only, it actually automatically creates some graph for you. And it can show you, which category you have most. So I have like duplicated features. I have the most count and other ones, right? So you can do that. And so far what I have shown you is default rules, right? I haven't modified anything. So if there are rules that does not fit your environment, does not fit what you need to do, you can customize those rules. To give you an example, I wanted to give you an example in the full backup. This rule broke, so I did send an email to the product managers. They're looking at it, but I can still show you. So you see there's a name rule full backup. What it does, it goes and checks if all your database that are in full recovery model has at least one full backup in last 7 days. It does do that. Now, for some reason, if you say, hey, um, for this SQL Server, I actually need full backup every 3 days. And I'm just picking up hypothetically, right? Just to give you an example. What you can do, you can go to you can write a JSON file and say the ID full backup, I want to override and I want to make the threshold 3 days. And then once you put it in there, you can use this with the default rule and your override rule. And now it is only going to check for 3 days instead of 7 days. And if you say that, okay, all the databases are okay with 7 days, I just need one single database that I need backup every 3 days. Now here you can do the same override, full backup, 3 days, and you can filter it by only one database. Say if I have a database name is Stack Overflow 2013, which I deleted for a different reason, I had it here. You can override that. So all my whole point is you can customize this based on your need. You can customize these rules. You do not have to use the default. So let me give you an example. So for max memory, the rule has a calculation, it sees how many instances you have, what's your server memory, and it recommends the max memory. And if you go above that, it gives you a warning. So for now, right now, I do not have a warning, right? So I'm good. So for demo purpose, I think this laptop has 32 gig of RAM. So I'm just going to say change my max memory to 32,000. So it will leave very small amount for the operating system, which is not recommended, right? I'm just doing this for the demo. Now I came here, gives me warning, right? He says, hey, your max server memory value should be 2837,377. It, came up with that formula. Now I said, no, for this environment, I know what I'm doing. Don't bother me. I want to keep my max memory at 32,000. But every time it's going to give you a warning, right? So what you can do, come here, same deal, item type override, ID max memory, recommend 32,000, right? I wrote a file here. Now I'm going to use that here. Even though right now I have 32,000, gave me warning, but if I use my customization, add that to the assessment, I do not get a warning. But if I do not use my customization, I'll get a warning. So you see how you can customize this based on your need, right? Let me switch it back to where it was. Hopefully making some sense. Let me know. Uh, Disable enable rule. I talked about this briefly. This gives you some example how you can disable a rule. Again, show you. ID override, because this is not a threshold type rule. This is either enable and disable. So I can just say enable equals false. That means next time it is going to run, it will not evaluate this rule. You can see here. It is disabled. And I give you some example how you can test it. You can disable all trace flags. All trace flags are disabled. I can say disable all my trace flags, but enable the performance one. I can have two customization combined in one call. I can do that. Okay, how about creating new rules? Right? I can create my own rules. And there are examples here, but if you want to write your own rules, please read this. I'm not going to read this for you right now, but read this and make sure you have the right setup for this if you want this to work. So I have a custom rule that I wrote, and it is saying that I do not have enough free space, right? It's saying I should have at least 25%, but we all know money is tight. Companies are not going to let us have 25% free space. And so I decided, no, I just want to have 10%, right? And I can customize my own rule. Now here, we do not get that warning. So let me show you a couple of things here. So custom rule, first custom rule T-SQL probe. You have to give all this, what platform, what version and all that. And then it's just a T-SQL statement. I know most of us are familiar with T-SQL, and running this T-SQL is, and telling us if I have less than 25%, this is my threshold, right? Then you give a warning. But then I said, okay, I wrote it for 25%. That's my base, but time is tight. Company doesn't allow me to have 25% free space. So what can I do, right? I can override that with that ID, override, I can change it to 10%. So even if you write custom rule, you can also have exceptions on your custom rules, like any other rules. And there are other, you can read this, how to make new rules. So I'm not going to read through this. And there are some useful documentation here if you want to look at those. So the next one is how can I run this against hundreds and thousands of database, right? So far, what I've shown you um, is just either one database or just databases within one server. But I'm sure all of you know that when you go to our work, we just don't have one server or a couple of databases that we probably have hundreds and thousands. There's something called CMS. I don't know if you heard Central Management Server. If you do not know, please read about that. That's a very nice thing to have for DBAs. It is by Microsoft. That way you can group your servers, you can manage it, you can run a query against all servers just from one click. Also, there's something called Dba Tools, which is a open source. A bunch of community contributors, maintain this. So I combined CMS and DBA tools, and I use this. So I'm not going to run this, but this you can take this code and you can build on top of it. So what it basically does, it takes all your server names, and then it does a for each loop using PowerShell, go through each server, and within each server, it will run these rules. And I can also, you know, um, you know, put another loop for databases. And when you do this, right, I can also put a comment. You can save the results to a table, and then you can expand this. You have to probably move the results to archive, and you probably have to purge your result set, over a period of time, right? Similarly, maybe like older than 6 months or something. But you can take this code and, work it on if you need to run this against hundreds and thousands of database. Now, so far what I've shown you, you need to write few lines of code, right? A little bit of PowerShell and T-SQL here and there. Now, if you say, no, I do not have time, I like this, I not going to use PowerShell for some reason, what can I do? As I said, this tool, Azure Data Studio, is a extension-based tool. What do I mean by that? It's a very lightweight tool, but you can enable and disable extensions. All these hundreds of extensions by Microsoft, third-party, individual contributor, different companies like Redgate, SQL Sentry, which is now part of SolarWinds. Uh, they all come up with modules. So if you need something that doesn't come by default, you can enable a module or extension. Sorry. So if we search, there is a SQL Assessment extension. It's in preview. It's written by Microsoft, and this is recommended by Azure Data Studio. So I have it turned on globally. So let's see what it does to us. This is my local instance. And all these you see here, they actually come from different extensions. And you see here, it automatically gives you a backup status, right? And it gives you a couple of other things, but I'm not going to talk about those right now. For some reason, this doesn't recognize that, this is running Windows 11. I upgraded it, but I don't know why it does not. Maybe, yeah, whatever extension is this coming from is not up to date. You see this SQL assessment. I can open this. Let me get some more space here, right? Now, without writing any code, without doing anything, just enabling this extension, I can come here and say Invoke Sql Assessment. Okay, while this is running, this will be a good time for questions because we only have 10 minutes and I want to give a few minutes to the next speaker for setup. So either Facebook folks or those who are in Teams, any question, comments, please put in the chat. While I'm running this way, it will evaluate server level rules and database level rules. Here I do not have any control, right? Because I'm not writing code. If you remember, if I wrote code in PowerShell, I could control my scope. But here I lost my scope, right? I do not have any scope because I'm using the GUI. But once this is done, I can now filter it. I can go and say, just give me the output that you ran against wildcard importers. Now it's going to only show those. So I have that luxury. I can also, see if I take that off, clear. Now it's going to show all. I can filter it by severity. I can filter it by tag. I can do all kind of things. One good part is this. I can create a HTML report, save it, open it. So if you're a consultant or if you go to a new place, how cool this will be to generate a report in a couple of minutes and give them all this that, hey, I need to work all this and, get some billable hours, right? Or even for your team, right? Someone is new, you can give it to them and say, go through this and fix it slowly. Other thing you can do is export as a script. So I showed you how to save this in a table, but now you ran it from GUI. How do you save it in a table? What you can do, export as a script. It keeps your T-SQL statement. It actually creates the table for you, and then it inserts all your result set in the table that later on you can use T-SQL to query it. Sorry. Yep. I can also look at all these rules in GitHub. It takes you directly there. And I can also look at the history. Of course, we ran it just, it's the first time. It's going to show up here. And we can go to the view in GitHub. Takes you to the repo. Yeah, that's it. So that's all I have. So thank you so much. We still have 5, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. I want to leave this for question, answer, comments, and give time to the next speaker to, to set up. And I want to thank again the organizers for inviting me. I don't take this lightly. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Tobe, very much. Thank you very much. Actually, it's a very fantastic tools. Actually, it's not actually tremendously increase the productivity of a DBA.
Yes, that's the beauty. Like, within few lines of code, you can do this because Microsoft has done the work for us. And these are coming from Microsoft engineers. So, definitely best practices. But again, as I said, some of these might not fit in your environment. We all have edge cases, right? Based on our business, based on our workload. So you can always customize it, and you don't need to run all, right? You can disable a bunch of those. Say, I don't need it. I know what I'm doing. Just or run the ones that you need, right? Or like I like the weak password thing. One is my one of my favorite. And I mean, who hasn't seen a username and password same, right? If you're
Right.
working 10, 15 years in, especially in your dev environment, you'll always see that, right? So how cool, and then once you tell them 1 or 2 times, they will be like, oh my god, this guy is monitoring us, right? We better be careful, right? Yeah, so it's so lightweight, 2 lines of code. I can run it against 1,000 servers,
Right.
and then send them all email, right? To the system owners, hey, why you have same username and password, right? And you will see that they're not going to do this next time. Yeah.
One question has come. He asked that is there any performance related scenario can be explored using these tools?
Performance based scenario can be exposed, right? So if we go and look at this, I think I briefly talked about index, right? Isn't that performance related? I think so,
This is
right?
related to performance, right?
Yeah, so there are like if you do not have, I'm not saying all foreign key indexes have all foreign keys should have index, but it's a general recommendation. And I think there was a rule to check that duplicate indexes, unused indexes. So maybe there's a tag. So there are a couple of things. Yes, I would say yes, there are. But we can take a look. There are. Yeah. So yeah. Oh, right here. Okay. So let me do this for you. Do not want to type during this demo because that's the last thing you want to do is make a mistake. Where text like, don't do some of this in production, right? T-SQL like this. I'm just doing it because we are in a small environment. Yeah. So I would say yes. These are all. This is 131 actually has a tag called performance. TempDB has different growth, number of TempDB files, parameterization should be simple, auto close, auto shrink is off, missing indexes. Um, yeah, there are a bunch of this. Yeah, there's a bunch of trace flags, um, VLF counts. If you have high VLF counts, if you don't know what is VLF, and if you're working with database as an admin or operations, look it up. Large, smaller size and large number of VLF can have significant, implication on your workload. So yes, there are. So to answer this, yes.
Right. Uh, Thank you very much, Tobe. I think the questionnaire will understand the fact, and I think it will be it need to be explored. So it will be very much easy for anyone to work on it. Uh, not very complex things, but very much interesting and productive tools actually. It's my personal opinion.
Yeah, and loading it into a SQL Server table just, because I know T-SQL. Now I can, like, I just, found out, right? So it's easy for me
Right.
to see which one I want to run, what I don't want. So I think, it's in a JSON format. It's also in a CSV. So, you can Google how to, load CSV or JSON into T-SQL. You'll see this bunch of examples online. So it's not, it's not that difficult.
Actually, the mobility is there uh, to to the result will be transferred to any format or anywhere he wants to use.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much for your
Thank
session.
you.
It's a
Thank you. Good luck.
wonderful
Good luck
thing
to
and
everyone.
tools actually.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. Let the other speaker go in time. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Really, really good session. I will try to share now.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we
Okay.
can.
So I guess we start in about a minute or so. Is that correct?
Right.
Okay, so really good session. I usually miss in some of the most recent conferences that people will talk more about SQL because everyone wants to talk about new stuff, cloud stuff, anything that's new, but they just forget the basic SQL things. And we nowadays see people who don't even know SQL, but they want to go to the cloud. And if you don't understand the basics, you'll never get ahead in life. So these kind of sessions that we just saw are very, very important as well.
Actually, I think we are biased by Microsoft Business Focus.
So
Due to that, everyone is trying to arrange event on Azure and Azure data platform and Azure, like Azure services. But today we are going to learn something and we will try to grab some knowledge to learn the machines around us.
so
We are very
let's
much
get
excited,
started
and
with this.
I want to share one thing to the audience that it is the first time he is taking this session, and it is requested by the audience of Bangladesh. And we are very much thankful and grateful to Andrew that uh, due to that request, he has arranged this session, and I think it's a tremendous time and effort has put in into this effort.
Correct, correct. So let's get started with this.
Thank you very much. Please carry on.
Yes, of course. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for having me. I know it's late there, so as far as I can tell from the clock, and we always have worries about this when it's multiple time zones. So it's 7 o'clock in Bangladesh. It's about 2 o'clock here in Portugal, 1 o'clock UTC.